Hilchis Sanhedrin v'Einshna Mesurim Lehem Peirik Shmeina Aser. So here the Rambam will list all the lavim that you get malchus for. Generally speaking, the Rambam divides the lavim. There's a lav sheyesh b'koris, and there's a lav sheyesh b'misa b'nei shemayim, and there's just a regular lav sheyesh b'maisa. So these lavim you get malchus for. A lav sheyesh b'misas bezin. So even if lepel, you're not getting Mrs. Bezin because there was no Asra Mrs. Bezin, there's also no Malchus for a Lav Sheyesh by Mrs. Bezin. Whereas if a person did a Lav together with another thing, which Yesh by Mrs. Bezin, and he didn't get the Asra on the Mrs. Bezin, he got the Asra on the Lav, so then he gets Malchus. Like we learned before, someone that shechts Oisev es B'nei, and he shechts it Lavi de Zora. So if they were Masrim Lavi de Zora, so he only gets Misa from Favi de Zora, there's no Malchus. If they were masrim for Esav as B'nai and not for Avodah Zarah, so then he gets malchus. Masha'enkin, if he does a lav which is only a lav which is yesh bei misa, and lepel they were masrim for the malchus, not for the misa, so he doesn't get malchus for that. That's the general din. Then there's going to be the din of a lav which is a nitik laseo, lav sheyesh bei tashlumin, various different lav shein b'maisa, which the Rambam is going to discuss here in this parak. Perish minasa. Elo hein haloikim. That's the first category. A lav which has chorus but ain't b'misas bezin, kigain echel chelev or v'dam or v'chametz b'pesach, for which all three things there's chorus for chelev, dam, and chametz. V'chein kol ha'ever aleses shechayav olav misa b'nei shamayim, kigain echel tevel or v'koyin tomei she'achel truma tehira. So this is also something which is misa b'nei shamayim. There's also a lav. V'chein kol ha'ever alav sheyesh b'maisa, any lav sheyesh b'maisa, kigain echel basar b'cholav elefel shatnez, so which is a lav, there's no chorus and there's no misa b'nei shamayim, but it's a lav sheyesh b'maisa, so you're chayiv malchus. Really, you have to understand why the Ram puts it in these three categories. Later on, he's also going to list it in three categories. The Nukudas Advarim is that every lav sheyesh b'maisa, you get malchus, regardless if that lav is yesh b'chorus, or regardless if the lav is yesh b'misa b'nei shamayim, or if it doesn't have chorus and misa b'nei shamayim, as long as it's a lav sheyesh b'maisa, and it's not a nitik lasei, and it's not nitnul tashlumen, so then you're chayiv malchus l'chura. Avalav she'ein b'maisa, kigain hoylech rochel, someone that's hoylech rochel, so it's only through dibur, he goes ahead and speaks lashon hara, or v'noikem v'noiter, which again, nikama and natira, which is nikama and natira is belev, and knows he's nikam, because he's taking the kama, so therefore he's not giving someone something which he would normally have given. Or natira means he's telling the person that I wanted to borrow this from you, and lepel, you didn't lend it to me, but I'm going to do it anyways. So basically, it was only b'dibur. He was keeping something in his heart. He was remembering something in his heart, and he mentioned it. He mentions it to the person that heard him at one point in time. So all v'neisei shem hashav. And so in this Makabal Lashon Haro is Makabal Eida Sheker, Nesa Shem Hashav, all of these things is Ein Leika, because even though it's a lav, Sai for Heilach Rachel, Sai Nekim, Sai Neter, and Sai Nesa Shem Hashav is a lav, nevertheless Ein Leika because it's a lav Shein B'Maisa. There's a question over here, Benigea Nikima, where Rambam says that Nikima is a lav Shein B'Maisa. The lechura, it's possible to be over on the sikim with a maisa. In other words, if a person, let's say, asks you to give him something, and he didn't give you something in the past, and you're telling him you're not going to give it to him because he didn't give it to you, so that would be nikima without a maisa. But if you do something to someone because you're taking the kama on that person, so that would be nikima with a maisa. The question is, why shouldn't you get malchus on the sikim when you do a maisa in order to effect the revenge? Now the maisa, there's a chinuch that says that a lav which could be performed without a maisa, even if you do a maisa, you're also not over. Now, since be'etzim it's a lav which doesn't really need a maisa in order to be over, so when you say a lav sheyesh b'maisa, it means a lav that you could only be over through a maisa. Mashenkin a lav which you be over without a maisa doesn't go into the gal of lav sheyesh b'maisa. The maisa is the Rambam. If you do it, the Rambam writes l'moshel b'neged the lav of bal yiro bal yimotzei. So if you just leave the chametz in your house, so then you're not over, you don't get malchus, even though you are over on the lav of bal yiro bal yimotzei, but lepel is a lav shein b'maisa. If on the other hand you went ahead and baked chametz during Pesach, so then you are over and you get malchus for baking the chametz. So we see from here that even if it's a lav shein b'maisa, even if it's a lav shemaisa, but if lepel, you were over on that lav through a maisa, you went ahead and baked the chametz, nevertheless you're chayiv. And al derech zeh, there's other cases where the Rambam paskins that a lav she'ein by maisa, but if you did a maisa, then you are chayiv. So therefore, you need an explanation to explain why by nikima, even if you would do a maisa of nikima, so that wouldn't be considered a maisa averet. Pashtus is because the nikima, the ikar is the lev, not the maisa. Not the maisa nikima, it's more the lev din. I'll call upon the Chreinim discuss why by nikima, when you do a maisa, you don't get malchus. But that's pretty clear that the Rambam says lav shein b'maisa again heilach rachel. Someone that goes ahead heilach rachel means he's going around like a peddler, and he says lashon hara and v'noikem v'noiter v'noisi shem hashav. He hears a shem hashav. He hears false testimony. Is all these cases there's no maisa and therefore in a lake. Halacha beis kol lav shein b'maisa ein leiken olav. That was the rule he said before. That has to be a lav sheyesh b'maisa. Kol lav shein b'maisa ein leiken olav. Chutz for 3 exceptions. Min nishba, someone that was nishba, either he was nishba lashov. Because when a person makes a shvua shav, he says ala isha hu ish or ala isha she isha, was an unnecessary shvua because it's obvious. Or shvua shav would also be when it's obviously not true. He says a shvua ala isha isha that he's isha or fakert, so that would go into the other shvua shav. And also benigei a shvua sheker. If a person said a shvua sheker, a person said something happened achalti, and lepel he was le'achal, or he said le'achalti and he was achal, so that would also go into together. It's a shvua, it's only a dibur, and it's ein b'maisa, and nevertheless you get malchus. You get malchus for being a nishba, either lashov or lasheker. And also a meimer, for making tmura, when a person says that this behemoth should be tmura of another behemoth which is kachim, so that's also meimer, which is only a dibur, and nevertheless you get malchus. And also umekal is chaveri b'shem. So these are the 3 cases: a nishba, either lashav or lasheker, or someone that made trumura, or it was mekal chaveri b'shem. So even though it's a lav she'ein b'maisa, but nevertheless you get malchus. That's the number 1. Then the Ram continues: v'chol lav shenitn lazhoras misas bezin. A lav which is nitn lazhoras misas bezin. In other words, there's a chi of misa for this lav. Kigain lesinaf or lesasim malacha b'hem hashabbos. So even though lepel, they didn't warn him, they didn't tell him he's going to get misa. All they told him was about malchus. Nevertheless, ain't leikenol. You don't get malchus for a lav shenitn lazhoras misas bezin. And another din, the chalav shenitn tashlumin, a lav which you could pay up. In other words, this lav you over the avera, and then there's a chi of tashlumin after this avera. Kigain lesigzel or lesignev ein leikenol. So again, over here, since it's nitn tashlumin is ein leikenol. And in this there's a clear is the pshat is the mashal. We're going to learn behemshech the next din. Maybe we'll just first learn v'chol lav shenitn glasei kigain lesika chaim alabonim or lesechal lepas sotcha is also ein leikenol. Elim kain lekiyam esa shaba. There's a lav anitig lasei. If lepel, you're never going to be mekayim the esa. There's a matzah where you can no longer be mekayim the esa. For example, the tfu which you took from the sada is already gone. It's no longer possible to put it out. Now there is the other lisikocheim alabonim. The aim died. So b'chiyai gavni yitaki get malchus. Masha'enkin in the case where you could be mekayim the esa, so then you don't get malchus. And then the chol lav shebeklolos nachadin, which the Rambam is going to titrate, a lav shebeklolos ein leiken olav, which the Rambam is going to titrate soon. Which arko lav shebetera leiken olav says nachamol. We have the rule that a lav sheyesh b'maisa is leiken olav. A lav sheyesh b'maisa leiken olav. A lav she'ein b'maisa ein leiken olav, except for 3 cases. That's nishba, either lashav or lasheker, and also for tmura, and also mekalos chaveri b'shem. That was rule number 1. Then the Rambam said another rule that a lav sheyesh b'misas bezin is ein leiken olav, and that would be a case of lesinaf or lesasim malacha b'shabbos. So these are lav sheyesh b'misas bezin, and you don't get malchus for it. Now there's another rule: v'chol lav shenitn letashlumin. And lav shenitn tashlumin is ein leiken aleim, and he gave the example of lesigzel lesignev is ein leiken aleim. And then there's a lav hanitik lasei. A lav hanitik lasei you don't get malchus. And that's only if you're going to be able to be Mekayim the Esa. If you're not going to be able to be Mekayim the Esa, you don't get Malchus. If you're not going to be able to Mekayim the Esa, then you do get Malchus. Masha'enkin, if you're still able to be Mekayim the Esa, so then you don't get Malchus for a lava nitlik lasei. V'chol lav shebeklolus, and a lav shebeklolus, like the Rambam Yisrael Taichus, is also ein leiken olav. Aber sh'ar kol lav shebetera leiken olim. Besides, these cases are always leiken olim. Now the Rambam gives a list, and the list is a lav shein b'maisa, a lav shenitn l'azharas Mrs. Bezdin, a lav shenitn l'tashlumin, a lav anitik l'asei, and a lav shebeklolus. Now, but negei a lav anitik l'asei, the pshat is the essa is being mevatel the chiyuv malchus. If you can no longer be mechayim the essa, so then you're going to have malchus. What about a lav anitin tashlumin? Is the pshat is that the tashlumin is going to be mevatel the chiyuv malchus? Is that the way it works? Or the pshat is just like we say a lav shenitin l'azharas Mrs. Bezdin. So be'etzim, such a lav is not b'chlal the gather of malchus. Al derech zeh, there's a svara to say a lav shenitin l'tashlumin. It's not the pshat is because the tashlumin is going to be mashlim, correct the lav. Like al derech lav anitik l'asei, the pashtus is the essa is going to correct the lav. And the male is going to take away the chiyuv malchus of the lav. And since there's a possibility that it'll take away, so you don't get malchus. Masha'enkin a lav anitil tashlumin, it could be that l'chatchilah, the chiyuv tashlumin, since there's a chiyuv tashlumin on this lav, it's not because you're going to be mekayim an essa and that'll be misak in this lav. Once brought a raya, there's a raya to it, b'negei ribis. By ribis, there's the chiyuv of the malva giving ribis, and there's a chiyuv of the leva, the malva receiving ribis and the leiva giving the ribis, and both of them don't get malchus, and the reason is because it's a lav shenitin tashlumin. So bishlei with the malva he has the chiyuv tashlumin. Masha'enkin the leiva doesn't have a chiyuv tashlumin. The leiva is the one that gave the money. The malva has to give back the leiva the money, and nevertheless the leiva doesn't get the malchus because it's a lav and nitin liv tashlumin. So that would be a raya that the gather of lav and nitin tashlumin is not pshat that tashlumin is going to be misak in the lav. There's other rayas that the Achreinim bring. Evan Oslo over here discusses this, that he's noted to the tzad that lav hanitin tashlumin is not like a lav hanitik lasei. It's a more al deravi a lav, which is nitin lasaris Mrs. Bezdin. And such a lav is mechatchila, not bechlal the din of a lav, which is nitin lamalkus. Halachi gimel. So one of the things that Rambam said that you don't get malchus for is a lav shebeklolus. Ezu lav shebeklolus. The lav echot shekoil in yonim harbi. So the one case of lav shebeklolus is if you have one lav which is koil in yonim harbi, kegen leiseichlu al adam, which there's many dinim that you learn out from leiseichlu al adam. We learned before leiseichlu al adam means beneged that the dinim of Bezdin eating after they paskin din and nefashis, and there's kama other dinim which we learn out from leiseichlu al adam. V'chein im namar lisas davar pleini. Upleni. There's one lav that includes a number of things together. Is hail v'leyichad lav l'cholechad ve'echad mehen. So by lav shebeklolus means the Torah says one word, liseichlo al adam, and then Chazal teach us that liseichlo adam teaches us many other things. Liseichlo adam means that you shouldn't eat before davening, and liseichlo adam means that Bezdin shouldn't eat after the din Torah. All kinds of things that we learn out from the words liseichlo al adam. So then any of these things aren't included in the chiyuv malchus. That's din number one. Now we're learning din number two, beneged the din of lav shebeklolus. If you have a lav that the Torah clearly says a number of things you shouldn't do, but the Torah just uses one loy for it, only one lav. Because the Torah says, lei sasid over upleni, is hail v'leyichad lav l'chol echad ve'echad mem, is ein leikin al kol echad ve'echad, elim kein chilikesim b'lav nacherim. You're not going to get malchus for each one separately. You will get malchus for each one. If you do each one individually, you'll get malchus. But if you do them both together, you're not going to get two malchus. That's the word. You don't have to do all of them in order to get malchus. It means you don't get separate malchus for each one. Unless elim kein chilikesim b'lav nacherim, unless the Torah in somewhere else, in one place the Torah puts them all together, and somewhere else the Torah puts a lav on them individually. Or sometimes it can happen that the Torah writes one pasuk, and it includes a number of things with one lav, and lepeil chazal wa mekabel, that even though it says one lav on all of them, but really if you do all of them, you mechuyev on each one separately. Ketzat. In zeh shenamar al toiklu mimenu no. You shouldn't eat from the korban pesach no, raw, ubashal muvushal, or if it's be cooked. It has to be tzliesh. It shouldn't be raw, and it shouldn't be bashal muvushal. So what happens if a person ate two pieces of the korban pesach? One he ate raw, and one he ate bashal muvushal. is ein a leik al hano val mavushel stein. If he's going to eat no and mavushel together, he's not going to get 2 malchus ela echad. And that's that since there's only 1 lav on both of them, so memela they're both included in the same lav, and memela they're not separated. And that goes into together of lav shebeklolos. The lav was killed both of them together. Ubechodesh uemer, pas by chodesh it says v'lechem v'koli v'karmel iseichlu, and lepeil v'chayav al shloshim sholish malchus. L'chura, based on this rule, since it says v'lechem v'koli v'karmel of chodesh you're not allowed to eat l'seichlu ad esem hayim hazeh ad aviachem dort in the emer atnufis you're not allowed to eat chodesh before the second day of Pesach when you bring the emer. So l'chura, the seichel the pashtus according to the rule would say that if you ate lechem and you ate koli and you ate karmel, all 3 of them should only be over 1 lav, because it's because there's 1 lav that's including all of them. But nevertheless, that by no ubashal mavushal, it's ein lechalik. So if you eat no plus bashal mavushal, you only chayiv 1 malchus. Masha'enkin, if you eat lechem, koli, v'karmel, so Chazal had the Kabbalah that over there it is machalik, and memela you chayiv 3 separate malchus. Harinamar, there's another passage that says, Le'yamotzi b'cho, maver b'nei ubiti b'eish, koisim ksomim, ma'oinen u'menachesh u'mechashev. So again, we have 1 lav, Le'yamotzi b'cho, and the Torah tells us 5 things. Maver b'nei ubiti b'eish, koisim ksomim, ma'oinen u'menachesh u'mechashev. Is aval b'shekol kol in yonim eilu b'lav echad, but lepeil arichilu koisim b'lav macherim. Elsewhere, the Torah clearly separates them. Because the Torah v'amar leisenachashu, the pasuk says clearly there's a lava leisenachashu and there's another lava leisenenu. Melamed shekol echad men b'lav b'v'nei. So from here we learn out that each one of them in that pasuk, even those parts that don't have a separate pasuk for. But Lepil, since we see that some of them have a separate pasuk for them, so Mela teaches us that all 5 of them, each of those 5 of them, is a separate chiyuv b'fnei atzma. And if you do all 5 together, you'll be chayav 5 lav, 5 lav and 5 malchus. Halacha Dalet. Now here we're going to learn that sometimes, even though for a lav, even a lav sheyesh bikaras, the chiyuv is malchus, but if he repeats it a number of times, so then he won't get malchus, just repeatedly getting malchus. Eventually he will be given a much more severe punishment, which will eventually lead for him to die. Halacha Dalet. Mi shaloka bebezna alisa karas. He received malchus for violating the isa karas, and then v'loka pam shniya al eisei karas atzmi. He went ahead and he did the same aver a second time. Kigen shachal chelev, he ate chelev v'loka, and he got malchus olav, and then v'achal chelev pam shniya, and then he ate chelev a second time, and again v'loka olav. Is him achal pam shlishis, if he's going to eat a 3rd time, so then ein malchus. Even lochur meikra the din is chayav malchus, but now ein malchus. El machnis nesel kippah. They put him into a kippah. What's a kippah? It's just barely his height, but it's a narrow area. He's not able to lie down in there. It's a narrow area. And they give him a meager amount of bread and water until his intestines will contract. He'll become ill from having so little food. And then they give him barley, and that causes his stomach to expand. Until his stomach expands, and it bursts. So that's how he dies. So this is for the punishment for the fact that he repeatedly went ahead and was over on the Issachars. Halacha hey. Misha over al Issachars and Mrs. Bezin, and lepel v'hisrubei. They gave him hasra, and v'hirkim bereishe ishosak v'likibul olav hasra. So notice, in order to be able to actually get malchus, he has to say that Almanas Kain Ani Yoisa. So if he just shakes his head and he doesn't really acknowledge that he's doing it Almanas Kain, so he doesn't get malchus. So Nacham Misha Avar Alisa Karis, Mrs. Bezin, he did something which is punishable by Karis, or which he would get malchus for, or is something which is even punishable by Mrs. Bezin, which is more severe. V'hisrubei, and they gave him hasra. V'hirkim b'reisha ishasek. So and he was quiet. He kept quiet. He didn't say anything, or even nodded with his head, which acknowledged that he heard the hasra. But on the other end, he didn't say that he's accepting this einish on himself. V'lei kibul olav asro. So the din is ein hergnese commission biyarnu. In order to be able to kill someone, he has to be masra atzmi lemisa. And al derech zeh, we learned before that malchus became misa imedis, so he has to be masra atzmi lemalchus. Vein malkanese. Now chazer v'oser came. He did it again. V'hisu bei. They went ahead and they warned him. V'hirkim bereisha ishosach kach. Is again ein lemisanese vein malkanese. So he did it twice. He went ahead and he killed someone. He did something which is chayiv misa. Rather, he did something which is chayiv misa or something which is chayiv kares. In Lepel, he wasn't punished at all for what he did, because Lepel, technically, he wasn't mekabel dasro, he wasn't kibel dasro. He didn't say amanas kenan yesa. Now chazer pam shlishis va'avar v'hisubei. He did this a third time. Again, he was hirkim bereisha ishosak. So technically, lechuri is not chayiv miso, he's not chayiv malchus. So again, koin sinoisli kipa achayomus. They bring him into the kipa achayomus. And v'chol elu sheli kibulu aleim asro. So that's the first thing. So basically, it's the same idea. The pashtus, some people learn that it's different than what before, but the pashtus advarim is that it's the same, just like before. Kain sinoisli kipa, and they give him lachem tzara mayim lachatz. So Aldero's over here, Kain sinoisli kipa, and they give him lechem tzara mayim lachatz, even though the Ram doesn't take cheruis. And then the machil and seir. So because in two cases, there were one case where a person received malchus twice for the same Isser Karis. So now he did it a third time. So then the machnis neisel kippah, he ate chaylev twice, and he got malchus twice. So the third time he eats chaylev, so it's machnis neisel kippah, and you have that seder of machil neisel lechem tzara mayim lachatz until you give him seirim. And now we have another case where a person, again, he did something twice. Either he ate chaylev twice, and he didn't get any malchus, because lepel he was hirkin bereisha, he was never kibul atzmei the hasra, he wasn't mekabel the hasra saying afal pikein, or he did something which is chayiv misa, and again he didn't get any punishment for what he did, because again he wasn't mekabel on the hasra and saying afal pikein. Now when he does it a third time, so again he goes through that same process of bringing him lekipa achayomus. Now v'chol elu shelikibul aleim asra. So the Rambam just said now what happens after the third time. But lepel, those people that lay kibul alei masro, the case that we just learned about is makin eisa makas mardus. They receive makas mardus, which is makas, in other words, makas for being a moirid. Hoyel v'chotu mikol makim. Afilu alisa shall receive makin eisa makas mardus. When a person does the Issa D'Rabbanan, he also receives makas mardus. So certainly, if a person went ahead and did aveira, which is chayve krisus, and Lepel, he didn't get malchus because there was no proper asra. Because Lepel, he wasn't masratzme, he didn't accept the asra. But Lepel, the din of makas mardus, you don't have to have the hilchas asra. In order to give malchus, he has to be that person was hisratzme lemalchus. In other words, he said almanas kein an yesa. Al derez that to give a person misa, he has to say almanas kein al yesa. But for the chachomim to administer makas mardus, it's not neger really that he said it. So therefore, in these cases, the first case that the Rambam was speaking about, he got malchus. Over there, Taka got malchus. He got malchus twice, and the third time is machnis neisel kippah. The other case is the case where he never accepted asra, whether it was a chayve krisis or it was chayve Mrs. Bezin. So the Rambam is saying, even though he didn't get malchus, certainly didn't get misa, but on the other end, he got makas mardus. He gave him makas mardus. Halacha vov, hagoynev klisharis min hamikdash. Or v'hamekal b'koisim, hamekal means he's mevarches Hashem, b'koisim with Hashem Aveidah Zorah. Or v'haboy l'aram, someone that's mevarches Hashem with Hashem the Eibishter, that's chayiv misa. Over here he was mekal b'koisim with Hashem of Aveidah Zorah, and v'haboy l'aram is these three things, gain of klishas min hamikdash, and mekal b'koisim haboy l'aramis, ein beznes kokelam, el ha'kanoim peigen b'hem, and v'chol ha'hergen zocha. This is something which kanoim are peigen by. This is something, it's halach l'mishmisinai, that this is something which is a din, kanoim pegim bem, kanoim could kill them. V'chein, koyin sheshimish betuma, which is really a lav, to mishamish betuma is a lav, lehoyo echav akenim avin eisen lebezin, and then they would be chayiv malchus, elepirchi kuhuna mitzian eisen chutz la'azora, umitzian esmoichei big zorim. With the gzorim, with the piece of wood that they would put on top of the mizbeach, they would use that piece of wood to be mitzian esmoichei. That's also halacha mishmisinai, that the Pirchei Kuhuna are allowed to do this for someone that's mishamish betuma. Gezeres hakosevi, that's the number one. Then the Ram continues, Gezeres hakosevu she'im misen bezen V'lei malkin sa'odam behidoyas piv. El al pishnei edim. Nos benegea, moment is the din as he does baldin k'mei edim dami. Masha'inkin benegea other things, we say that Gzeres HaKosovo, that Bezdin doesn't kill someone, doesn't give someone malchus based on hidoyas piv, el al pishnei edim. V'zeh shaharig Yeshua ochan, or v'david leger amoleki, behidoyas pivim, is Hira Shah Hoisa. Either it was Hira Shah, was especially Hira Shah, that you're allowed to accept his Hidah. Eidin Malchus, or it was Mitzad Din Malchus. But I'll call upon him, it's not the regular din. Regularly, when a person comes along and is Moida, that he did an Aveira, so Bezdin doesn't punish him based on that Hidah. Havala Sanhedrin, Ememisen, V'lei Malkim, Hameida B'Aveira. Sanhedrin doesn't punish, doesn't give Misa, doesn't give Malchus to someone that's made the B'Aveira. Now, l'chura the pashtus advarim tzegzeres hakosa. The person has to have edus. He's not neman. But the Rambam adds shemen nitra fadaiti b'dover zeh, because maybe he's nitra fadaiti at that point in time. In other words, l'chura he's saying about himself. So l'chura we should believe him. We say we're not sure because shemen nitra fadaiti b'dover zeh. Maybe like he lost his mind. Shemen min ha'amelim mori nefesh ha'machak lomas. Maybe he's very depressed. And maybe he's waiting to die. Shein Tomet taken hacharbis bebitnom umashlichen asum el agagas. They're causing themselves to lose their lives. So there's always a concern. So even though maybe it's a far-fetched concern, but it's certainly not absolute that what he's saying is the truth, and therefore we don't accept it. And so it's not so clear. In other words, on one hand you say l'chura that the Torah said that you only accept edus. The fact that a person is saying about himself, legabe din nefashos and legabe din malchus, we don't accept it. That's l'chura the pashtus advarim. That's what the Rambam fears is. Ukloli shel davar gzeres hamalachi. You need edus in order to testify. The Rambam is saying that l'chura there's a svara to say that if he's saying about himself, it's keilu like a non-sadi. In other words, it's pasha that is saying the truth, because a person wouldn't say about himself not the truth. And the Rambam says lav dafka. In other words, it's not 100% when a person says about himself that he's saying the truth, and therefore you don't accept it. And ultimately, kloli shel davar, as the Rambam fears is kloli shel davar gzeres hamalachi, that in order to give a punishment, it has to be based on what Edom say edus, and not when the person was made on himself.